Hello, my name is Ember. Welcome back to my channel where I play The Sims 4. Today I have a slightly different video for you all where I'll be reacting to a video that another Sims YouTuber put out, Plumbella, about being autistic, because I'm autistic too, and I thought it would be cool to talk about some of this stuff on my channel and about my own experiences being autistic. There will be content warnings throughout the video, as well as chapters on YouTube, so you can skip forward to the next section if you don't want to hear about that, if you need to avoid it because it's triggering for whatever reason. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. So Plumbella recently put out a video. I mean, it's 9 days ago and I'm recording this. Probably be a little bit longer once this video is released. But yeah, Plumbella recently put out a video called I Am Autistic. And if you didn't know, I am also autistic. So I was really glad to see that Plumbella had made this video. And honestly, I have watched this once already, and as I was watching, I just had so many thoughts, so many things I wanted to say. So I figured I would watch it again and give you all my reaction and sort of build off of the things that they say to talk about similar topics, just because it's something that I have been wanting to talk about, but sometimes it's hard to figure out, how to. And Jesse's already done a really good job doing that. So I figured I would sort of build off of it, give a response of my own experiences. Yeah, so this part will just be reacting to what's in the video, and then I'll probably also have some of my own commentary that's not directly reacting to the video. I'm not going to include Plumbella's whole video in this one or anything, and it's a really good video, so you should definitely go and watch it on her channel. And since I don't have a nice PowerPoint, I don't really do a face cam on this channel, I thought it might be fun to do a little bit of gameplay, Sims 4 footage in the background of the video. So I'll be making a version of myself in The Sims, and yeah, I'm not really sure what all I'm gonna have, but yeah, there'll be some gameplay and stuff, just so that there's some interesting visuals while I talk.
There is a saying, and I think that this saying is the most integral thing that you should take away from this video, and it's that if you know one person with autism, then you know one person with autism, bestie, because autism is a spectrum. You can have two people with autism and they have completely different traits. It's not a checkbox kind of thing. It's a spectrum.
So yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a pretty good saying that really it's for most things, honestly. If you know one person, you know one person. No matter what it is, people aren't clones of each other, we're all unique. We all have, even if we have the same condition or if we have the same identity, we experience it in a different way, or it means something different to us. So yeah, even though we have some things in common, and I'll definitely talk about the things that I have in common with Plumbella in this video. We're not the same person. We're not exactly the same just because we're autistic, and just because we relate to something doesn't mean that all autistic people will, or that if you don't, you're not autistic enough or whatever.
Autism can be categorized by qualitative difficulties in social communication and reciprocal social interactions. Very much me, bestie. Qualitative difficulties in social imagination and restrictive, repetitive, and stereotype behaviors and interests.
Yeah, when I first heard this part about the difficulties with reciprocal social interactions, I was like, well, that sounds familiar. It's definitely, there can definitely be issues for me with, I don't know, engaging with people in the way that they expect socially, and usually, especially for neurotypical people, I've noticed I don't really think about a lot of this stuff anymore at the moment, because I mostly communicate with other neurodivergent people and a lot of other autistic people, and so it's not nearly as much of a problem. And I do think it's interesting that stereotyped behaviors and interests is one of the criteria, because it's very subjective. What do you mean stereotyped? I don't know. It feels it's oh, we've decided these things are indicative of being autistic, and therefore these things are indicative of being autistic. If you just want to say we'll know it when we see it, just say that,
So before I dived into my personal experience as well, I wanted to put some pictures from the NHS website on the signs of autism.
So on this slide, Plumbella is kind of just going over the main signs and not really giving much of their own commentary on it. So yeah, if you want to see this, go watch their video. I'm going to save my commentary for talking about my personal experiences.
How did I know I have autism? I get asked this question a lot because I was diagnosed late with autism. It wasn't caught in my childhood, even though it probably potentially should have been. Yeah, they would say me.
Yeah, I can relate to that about I don't know. I understand now why it wasn't, but I still think it's a bad reason. So yeah, let's just skip to when I figured out that I was autistic. My senior year of high school, my friend was taking a psychology class, and she found this website with like a bunch of tests, you know, those like diagnostic tests, like, do you have this? Like, are you this? You know, are you depressed? Are you autistic? Whatever, that sort of stuff. And so we all just like started taking them for fun, and we just like took a bunch. And I took the like, I took several other ones. I don't remember which ones. And I was like, yeah, none of these fit. Like, you're right. Yeah, none of this is relatable. And then I did the like autism one, and it said like, oh, you have like a high percentage of like the traits of autism. And I was like, wait a second. Yeah, a lot of that stuff in that quiz did relate to me a lot. And so, you know, I didn't just take the quiz and go like, I'm definitely autistic, but I looked at the quiz and I sort of started doing more research myself. And I also like noticed who else of my friends like had, you know, the high scores on the test. And I was like, you know, I kind of see the pattern. Like, we could definitely all be autistic. And this was a very like nerdy friend group, which historically I've always identified as like weird and like as a nerd. And as I've been researching this more, looking into it, I realized that like basically the definition of nerd, I mean, it's really hurtful. Like, if you go look up like a definition of the word nerd, it's very hurtful and kind of judgmental. So I'm just gonna give like a quick content warning for that. But it's very much like, oh, like you're just describing the traits of autism. Like, you're just describing an autistic person. So yeah, here's the word nerd. This is a word that I have identified with for a very long time. And one of the definitions is a person considered to be socially awkward, boring, unstylish, etc. So yeah, you definitely get the social awkwardness in there when you talk about being autistic. I don't know about boring, but like definitely the whole unstylish thing, that was always a big sticking point, I guess. Like, I was definitely bullied for that. And the whole like intelligent but single-minded person obsessed with a non-social hobby or pursuit, which sounds a lot like special interest. And as I think as Plumbella mentioned earlier, like, it's also a reason that sometimes certain people are missed out as being autistic because their special interests are a little bit more social, or they seem social, and so no one like recognizes that there's something going on there. But again, I'm not saying like every nerd is autistic. That's not what I'm trying to say, but it helped me understand why I identified so heavily with this identity of nerd. And it's kind of like calling myself a nerd, calling myself weird was how I labeled being autistic before I understood that I was autistic, basically. And I think that, you know, I haven't done like a whole research project on it. I do think it'd be interesting, but I do think that the stereotype of the nerd character is often very autistic coded. So yeah, basically, that was a bit of a tangent, but basically I spent several years after that really like researching about the diagnostic criteria, getting involved heavily in online autistic communities, talking to other people, doing research, sort of like coming to understand myself better. And then eventually I did start like sort of posting online in like very autistic communities and talking about like, I think I'm autistic, and like talking to them, and through that getting to understand myself better. And it was just a really nice experience to be in community with other autistic folks and to like start to recognize myself in them and to understand that like there's nothing wrong with me, I'm just different, and to be able to figure out ways to cope that are better for me, and to stop feeling like just because everyone else wants to do something or everyone else likes something, I don't need to. Like, I had just started college, and I was like, you know, just because everyone likes going to the football games, like they're really overstimulating for me. Like, I about had a meltdown at one. I didn't even have any friends to go with. Like, I was there just like sitting alone, not enjoying it, completely overstimulated, lost in the crowd. And I was like, why am I here? Like, just because other people enjoy this doesn't mean I have to. And I think coming to recognize that I was autistic really helped with that, because I started to realize like, just because there's some things that people like doesn't mean I have to like them. And I can figure out what I enjoy and what I want to do, and I can pursue those things instead.
Also always had a very interesting relationship with gender.
Yeah, I also have a relationship with gender in that I don't like it. And I've always sort of articulated that. Like, I always hated gendered things. My like favorite color was blue, just because like, and I like hated pink. And the thing is like, it wasn't anything inherent to those colors. I just hated being boxed in. I hated feeling like, oh, like you have to like these things, you have to do these things. I don't know. I feel like I tried to like widen the binary for myself and be like, women can do these things too. But it just still wasn't, like, fulfilling. Yeah, everyone of any gender, like, should be able to do anything, and I believe that very strongly. But, like, personally, I just don't want anything to do with it. Like, I don't see, in our society, gender is very heavily tied to gender roles and gender norms and, like, ideas of what it means to be different genders. And personally, I just hate it, and I wish that I could escape from it, and it doesn't really seem like I can. But I'm going to do as much as I can to fight back against being placed in any box, because I just don't think, I feel I don't like being constrained in who I can be. And I think that gender still is a constraint for me. Maybe not for everybody, but it feels constraining to me.
Was a slight issue where I didn't realise that bringing a sword into school was not socially acceptable, because obviously it could hurt people. I just thought they were cool. I didn't want to harm anybody, but that was an issue that we got into. But yeah, I was a delight to have in primary school.
I think, I don't know. I'm thinking about, like, I was very big on rule following in primary school, or, like, elementary school for me. Like, I would rigidly stick to every single rule. And I've told a story about that. But it's sometimes hard to get along with your peers when you, like, are so obsessed with following every rule to the letter, literally. And it's also just so tiring. They have so many rules. Why are there so many rules in schools? Like, it needs to, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about schools and how, like, toxic they are, but I was very, like, I wanted to do everything right. I really wanted my teacher's approval. So yeah, I, like, tried to do everything right, but then at the end of the day, it just left me exhausted a lot of the time. Like, when I would get home, I just couldn't cope anymore, and I would be very overwhelmed, and I would have meltdowns a lot of the time. And, like, when I was at school, I was often, like, singing in my head or, like, playing music in my head to sort of drown out everything that was happening, or, like, to sort of dissociate from it. I also read a ton as a kid, and I definitely used that as a way to, like, move into myself and get out of, like, very overwhelming situations, because I can be very, like, dissociated into a book and just completely ignore all the chaos around me, which was definitely, like, a way that I survived in school. But yeah, I, like, for most of my schooling, I was just very, very stuck on following the rules, which I guess, like, probably made some teachers like me, definitely didn't make other students like me, and it definitely made things hard for me, like, having to learn that, like, sometimes it's important to break the rules, and sometimes the rules are harmful, it's been hard to do. And also, like, some rules, they don't expect you to literally follow, and if you do literally follow them, you'll run into problems because no one expected that, you know? I also, like, I would definitely talk a lot in class. Like, I just have a hard time, like, sitting, if I know the answer to a question that's been asked, I have a really hard time sitting and not answering it. And so I would talk a lot and I would answer questions, which is good to a point, but, like, I could tell that some of my teachers and, like, classmates didn't like it, but I just couldn't, like, sit still and not, like, the masking was so exhausting, you know? I couldn't just, like, not say anything, and I had to, like, talk when I knew the answer. And it definitely caused some problems. And, like, when you're in a classroom with, like, 20 to 30 people, people don't like it when, like, you do most of the talking. Well, they do sometimes. Like, in a lot of my math classes, people were like, oh, thank goodness, we don't have to answer any of the questions. But, you know, but other than that.
Realistically, secondary school was just way too much for me. Way too much stimulation, way too many people. There was also a breakdown at age 40.
It's interesting to me, too, because, like, secondary school was actually a lot better for me. I think because a lot of my classes were smaller, things weren't as crowded. We weren't, like, we had separate buildings. We could, like, walk outside to stuff, and the hallways weren't as crowded. I wasn't, like, having to get stuff from a locker because we all carried backpacks. We changed classes less often. We had 4 classes a day. I think all of that helped compared to, like, middle school, which was just very overstimulating. There was just too many people all the time. Too crowded. I was definitely stressed in high school, but I was getting to, like, learn about stuff that I was really interested in. So I think for me, it was definitely a bit better, at least in, like, middle school.
Okay, because people have fucking body hair. I have a tash.
I really like these transition screens and, like, the music.
Social difficulties. Sorry, I'm sweating, actually.
Same.
So the biggest thing that I struggle with is one-on-one contact. I absolutely despise one-on-one contact and absolutely can't do it.
I don't understand how people, like, hang out. Like, you just, like, contact people and like go do things with just them? Like how? Why? I went out with a friend and like their friend the other day, and it was nice because there was like 3 of us and we were all neurodivergent and like queer, and so like that was great. But if it had just been like two of us, I think I would have had a lot harder time with it. And I have a really hard time like keeping up with people one-on-one. I do a lot better in situations where I'm like seeing people in groups, like in classes or clubs, and like I don't have to set up a time to like do something or set up like a hangout or whatever. Like I do a lot better when there's like a regular place where we're gonna see each other. And it's not going to be one-on-one. And like even like online too, I have a hard time like texting people directly, and I do much better when I can just like see them in an online space and like we can talk about stuff if we want to. But yeah, I have a hard time with one-on-one contact for sure. And I think honestly, I think a big part of it is eye contact. There's a lot more expectation for eye contact when you're one-on-one. When there's more people, like you don't need to make eye contact with any specific person. You can just sort of look around, you can look between them. But I do think that's a really big part of it, is that there's way more expectation of eye contact when you're one-on-one.
Don't like uncontrolled social situations.
Same.
Like, for example, my mum, I popped out of her womb, right? She knows me so very well. That is a different kind of one-on-one communication because I know what I can expect with my mum. These social difficulties.
Yeah, I do also like if I'm comfortable with someone, it feels kind of more like I'm like being alone. It feels less like a social situation because like I know them and we can just sort of like chill and do it's called like parallel play, where you like each are doing your own thing at the same time but in the same place. But you don't necessarily have to like engage with each other at time. You can just like be together and do the things on your own, and I do find that a lot easier. But it's like a very, it's not with very many people at all.
Everything is scripted. I know a script of what is going to happen if I walk in Tesco's, and I don't even mean just like a verbal script. I mean a full-on detailed plan. Like I know where I'm going, I know this bit, and if something interrupts that.
I do have a really hard time shopping with other people. I've tried to go to like the grocery store with other people, and I find it so overwhelming. Like I can't just like wander around, or like sometimes they'll want to talk to people. I cannot do that. I've tried, and I about had a meltdown the times I've tried. I've started getting a grocery pickup, which has been really nice during the pandemic, where most of the time I don't even have to go in the store. I just go in my car and pick up the groceries, and it takes up a lot less energy. But yeah, I can find it very overwhelming, and I do tend to script things as well. I don't know, I wouldn't say everything is consciously scripted, but a lot of times if I'm thinking about like a conversation or like what I want to say, like I'll like rehearse over and over, and I'll like say the thing that I'm gonna say in my head over and over and over. Yeah.
I don't personally think so, but I've also been told I have a monotone voice. My flatmate from uni.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a monotone voice. I think maybe sometimes I do. From what I've heard, it seems like sometimes people have a hard time understanding like when I'm telling a joke, because my voice will just be kind of monotone. I don't know. Like, y'all hear my voice. What do you think? But I don't think mine's like particularly monotone, but I think I might express myself in my voice differently than a lot of other people do.
Also, I had to film something recently and I got very overwhelmed with it. Like I had to go somewhere to film. And towards the end of it, there was a stark contrast between my voice at the beginning and end, because at the end I was so overwhelmed that my voice could only come out in monotone. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. Like sometimes when I get overwhelmed, honestly, I'll lose words. Like I'll get to where I have to be very straightforward, like, like just stuff like very simple, but like it's a lot of times my words will be like slurred. It just gets to where it's like very hard to like get out the words. And that is when I'll see more like monotone, or more like I just will have a harder time speaking. I haven't had that happen recently, honestly, because because of the way I'm able to take care of my needs, I don't get overwhelmed as much, which is really nice. And also just when I do get overwhelmed, I'm able to isolate, because a lot of the biggest problems are when I get overwhelmed and there's someone there who expects me to talk to them, and like I cannot, like I'm too overwhelmed. I cannot talk to you right now. I cannot communicate. And a lot of times it happens if something starts going wrong, people will be like, "What's wrong? Like, tell me what's happening. Can I help you?" And it's like, "No, I can't talk to you right now." It's too much. So being able to like go and like isolate and just like take care of myself in those situations can be very helpful. And being able to like message people, because a lot of times writing is much easier than talking. But yeah, I've definitely noticed when I'm overwhelmed, like it'll get a lot harder to speak sometimes.
Also, I don't like to talk about what I like to talk about, which is why I get a lot of people saying, like, I really feel like we could be friends. I'm autistic too. And I really understand that one because, yeah, I only like to talk about what I like to talk about. That's an autistic thing. Sorry.
I love talking to other autistic people, and when we can just, like, talk about our special interests, it's great. Like, especially what I really like to do is find, like, an intersection of our special interests. You know, it's like, okay, what are you interested in? What am I interested in? Okay, now where do those connect that we can both talk about it and be excited together? Those are great conversations because you can, like, learn stuff, but it's stuff that's related to things that you're very interested in. So you're, like, learning things, and you get to talk about what you like, and they get to talk about what they like, and then you also get to learn new facts that you can then share with other people. It's great.
I'm also very literal. There's a couple of times this has happened. The main one I can think about is when I had braces. I've really struggled with my teeth for a long time, like with pain and stuff like that. And when I had braces, I said, it hurts to brush. And the dentist said, just brush through the pain. I took that as brushing through the pain repetitively. And then my sister was like, no, just brush your teeth normally don't keep brushing through the pain. And stuff like that.
It's so, like, okay, it didn't happen the same way, but, like, how did the same thing happen to me, basically? Like, last time I went to the dentist, they said, like, you're over brushing your teeth. You're making your gums recede because you're brushing too hard. And I realized it's because I thought when you were, like, brushing your teeth or flossing, if it hurts, it means you need to do it more, right? Like, they always say, like, oh, if it bleeds when you floss, like, it means you need to floss more. So I thought that, like, if it hurt when I brushed my teeth, I needed to brush the spot where it hurt more, so then I would, like, keep brushing the spots where it hurt more because I thought they needed to be brushed more. But no, they hurt because I kept brushing them too hard, and it was, like, messing up my gum. I really thought that you were supposed to brush more where it hurt because it meant, but it's just so funny to me that we had, like, the same experience, but, like, for kind of, I don't know, I guess it's kind of the same reason, right?
Also, I thrive on alone time.
Same.
I love being alone. Some people, like, I'm very much an introvert, 100% an introvert. Being with people really takes my social battery out. And
Also
if I
same.
have to be with people, then I need time alone in a
I know, like, definitely not all autistic people are introverts. Like, my girlfriend is an extrovert and is autistic. But, like, for me, at least, being around people is just very draining. And even when, like, I really enjoy it, I need time alone to, like, recalibrate and just to, like, be by myself. And no, sleeping does not count. I've had so many people, I'll be like, oh, I need, like, time to rest. And, like, they're like, oh, well, why can't you just, like, rest when you sleep? Or, like, why don't you go work out and rest? Like, no, I need to rest. I need to do a thing that's relaxing for my brain. And sleeping is not relaxing for my brain, all right? I don't, maybe it is for other people. Sleeping is not relaxing for my brain. And if I'm overstimulated, I am not going to be able to go to sleep. You know, like, I have to be able to, like, sit and, like, watch YouTube or play a game, you know, like The Sims. Like, I need to be able to sit and just, like, relax on my own to recover from spending time with other people. And, like, that rest is very important to me. And it's not the same thing as, like, when I need to rest because I'm sleepy.
I also have absolutely no boundaries on what I talk about or where I talk about it. I just can't kind of understand these things, which probably embarrasses my family, but this is the kind of thing I don't understand because literally every single person in the world farts. So why are people so scared of it? Why are we scared of farting as a society?
I feel like I tend to censor myself a lot, but it does definitely take a lot of energy. And it took me a really long time to figure out, like, what type of things are considered okay to talk about. And a lot of times when I get comfortable with people, I will, like, those filters will kind of go away, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it can be bad in society. And I do worry that, like, with the pandemic and with, like, I haven't been in, like, neurotypical social situations that much recently. So I do worry that when I am again, I'll just have lost all those filters and I just will talk about stuff that, like, I shouldn't talk about. I have outed myself on accident by not being careful what I talked about. So I definitely, like, I do have some trouble with that. If I start talking about a special interest, if I start talking about something I really enjoy and, like, am passionate about, I'm just going to talk about it. And, like, sometimes it's stuff I shouldn't be talking about, or like, people always tell me I'm too loud. Like, you know, oh, you can talk about that loudly in this restaurant. Like, I don't go out to restaurants anymore, to be honest, but that was definitely a big deal. Like, people always tell me to like be quiet. I hate it when people tell me to be quiet. Like I'm always being told to be quiet, and it's like, but I'm passionate about this thing. I want to talk about this thing. Like, why do we care so much what other people think, you know? But yeah, I can relate to some extent, and like even when I do have boundaries, it's very draining. And sometimes it slips when I get excited. Oh my gosh.
Also,
okay, when I watched this section before, I was like, someone else has that? What? Okay, I'll play part of this, but like, oh my gosh, I was like, I've been looking for my whole life, being like, does someone else have this? Like, what, you know, the feeling? And like, I described the feeling, and no one ever knew what I was talking about.
So one thing that I didn't realize that not everybody felt is I only have one feeling. I don't actually know what I feel. I have one feeling in my stomach, and I have to take time out of my day to sit and like talk about my feelings and kind of pluck them out of me to know what I'm feeling. And
for me, a lot of times it's like I have to observe myself. A lot of times I figure out how I'm feeling based on like looking at myself and my reactions and figuring out what I'm probably feeling. So it's not like an instinctive thing. And for me, that like feeling, so I have this feeling in my stomach. I've described it before as like an emptiness. Like sometimes I'll be in a social situation and it's like things are going okay, and then all of a sudden it's just like I get this feeling in my stomach, and it's just like, and I think it's like anxiety, and it can be excitement to fear. For me, sadness, like I kind of have a handle on sadness. I've experienced a lot of sadness. When I watched the movie Inside Out, I very much identified with sadness. So that's probably the emotion I'm most in touch with. And how a lot of my emotions tend to like translate into sadness. I have a hard time expressing other emotions. But yeah, when I get that feeling in my stomach, I also often will get this like feeling in my throat. It's like that sort of choked up feeling you get when you're about to cry. But like usually I don't cry, and there's no reason I would necessarily be crying. I think part of it is like overstimulation. I tend to get overstimulated and I need to like go be alone, and then I'll like feel better, but it just makes it really hard to continue in social situations when I get that feeling in my stomach. So yeah.
it's a very odd, well, it's not really odd to me because it's all that I know about, but hearing that other people have like different feelings is very odd for me, because fear, anxiety, stress and excitement and all happiness, giddiness, that all.
Oh yeah, that's also why I don't really like excitement or like giddiness, or like I don't really like holidays. I don't like big celebrations or like things where you're supposed to be really excited, because it feels the same to me. Like excitement feels like anxiety to me. You know, like it all feels bad. It all feels, and I'm just very susceptible to emotions. Like the emotions people are feeling around me, I tend to pick up on and like feel. So if I'm at an event and everyone is excited, I'm gonna feel the excitement, and it's so overwhelming. That's one reason I don't really like holidays and stuff, because I feel all of that, and then I think in response a lot of times I'll go numb because it's just too much, too many feelings. And so then the end result is like I'm just like completely numb to everything. And it's very unpleasant. And I just really don't like strong emotions a lot of the time. Whether it's in myself or like in media, I just can't watch media with like too strong emotions, especially like, I don't know, embarrassment, like very dramatic stuff, or like excitement. I just have a really hard time with. I cannot deal with horror at all, because if the character in the media is scared, I will be scared. If they think they're going to die, I will feel like I'm going to die. So yeah, it's very like I tend to stay away from media that has those strong emotions, because I'll feel it and it's just too much. I just can't handle it.
Kind of feels like the same feeling in my stomach. So I have to work through what I work through. You know, I feel like this can be quite a difficult concept for you to wrap your head around if you kind of know what you're feeling at any given point. But yeah, I think it's called interoception. Also, this includes hygiene. I don't have the instinct to do hygiene.
Same.
And in case you're hearing this and being like, ugh, stinky, that is ableist.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. I love that. I love that they like brought this up, because there's so many people who go like, oh, you don't have a shower every day. Like, that's disgusting. It's like, there's a lot of people that aren't able to like shower every day for like disability reasons, like a lot of disability reasons. And so to act like it's like disgusting that like sometimes it's hard to do hygiene, okay? Like for so many reasons. You don't get to sit there and feel like you're better than somebody else just because they have a hard time doing things that come easily to you, you know?
let's just squash that one right there. Hygiene as well with mental illnesses and stuff is usually the first thing to go. And it's especially more complex with autism because I don't have the need in me. Like, I don't have the, oh, I should brush my teeth now. Oh, I need a bath now.
The only times where I like really enjoy a shower and I'm like, oh yeah, I want a shower is when I'm having like a very bad sensory feelings because I need to shower. Like, if I've got like grime all over my body, or if I'm like itchy from sweat or like allergies or whatever, or like if I go outside and I'm got really hot and I need to cool down, then like, wow, I actually want a shower because I'm in a bad sensory situation. And for me, showers and like baths and all of that is kind of a bad sensory situation. So I only want to do it when the like relief I'll get from it outweighs the bad, you know? And so it can be very hard for me to do. I just don't like things bother other people before they bother me. You know, when it comes to hygiene, or like a lot of times I just won't clean. Like in the past, a lot of times I haven't cleaned in like the room I share with a roommate that much. And I feel bad about it, but it's like they feel that it's gotten to a point where it needs to be cleaned sooner than I do. You know, I just don't I don't think it's a problem. Like, I'm like, it's fine. But they apparently, you know, are like, okay, I need to clean this.
Just don't judge people for their hygiene things. Obviously, I would rather choose to have the innate understanding that, like, or the instinct to brush my teeth every day. I just don't, right? Mm-hmm. I do brush my teeth, but not because instinctual. Anyway, I feel like that's a very important one, and I see too many people judging too many people on hygiene. I find that is part of mental illness that is still very much stigmatized, and my body also doesn't tell me that I need to sleep or I need to wake up. So again, like, very much when I only go for a wee when my body is like, you are about to piss yourself, girl. I only ever fall asleep when my body is like, I physically cannot sustain myself anymore. And
for a long time, I would just like, I mostly went to sleep when I would like pass out, like while I was trying to do work or whatever, like, or watching something. Like, I would often just sort of fall asleep without having like done any of the stuff to get ready for bed. I've sort of gotten into a better routine now, but like, it's still very hard. Going to sleep is very hard. And I do tend to set an alarm for myself to wake up because like, I have a much easier time going to sleep if I'm pretty tired. So I need to make sure I don't get too much sleep because then I'll never go back to sleep, you know, which is frustrating. Like, I shouldn't have to. But a lot of times I have to get up and go to sleep at a certain time for work and school and stuff like that. So,
but sleeping issues and insomnia and stuff like that as well is a very common thing for autistic people.
I've always had a really hard time going to sleep. You know, I would be supposed to go to sleep and I would stay up reading, or I would stay up and write in my journal. I used to have like a little flashlight at my bed. So like when I was supposed to go to sleep, I could, you know, get up and do stuff. I would play with my dolls or whatever, or like my stuffed animals. I don't know. I just have a hard time just like going to sleep, you know? I can't just be like, oh, it's time to go to sleep. So I'm just gonna good night. And I've always been like that. I've always like stayed up and done other stuff.
Next up, sensory issues. Beep, bop, beep, bop, bop, boop. I do feel really uncomfortable showing skin, especially when skin touches each other. Ugh, especially because I'm very
I do hate that, like chafing and stuff like that. That was one reason I always hated wearing like dresses and skirts and stuff. I would have to wear shorts underneath because like when my skin like rubs against each other, it's just so uncomfortable. Like, I don't understand. It's just I do not like it.
Bright light as well. Not necessarily in the way you'd think. Like, I have an overhead light, and is it annoying me a little bit? Yeah, but I'd say only the same amount as any person it'd annoy. But like,
see, I never turn on my overhead light. Partly it's just like it's a really bad light. But I do definitely have a lot more problems with overhead lights bothering my eyes and like making me really tired and like overwhelmed. And so I just have like a lamp that I have that sort of lights up most of my room. I also just find them very hot, like very bright lights, so like also add a lot of heat, and I don't like that.
Body temperature. I'm just interjecting because I actually forgot the biggest one. All of my life, I have sworn blind that I've had an allergy to water, even though it's not really, because we're made like 70% water. Getting a bath, as much as it's like a decompression thing for me, after a bath, no. I can't run through sprinklers or anything in the summer because it makes my skin itch like crazy. Also,
yeah. For me, I'm very sensitive to heat. It does make me very like itchy. Like, I can't, if my shower's too hot, I'll get like itchy. I have this, it's like called cholinergic urticaria, I believe. Basically, I get hives from heat. and get like very itchy, and it can happen outside too, and then mixed with like sweat, it can be really, really bad sometimes. Like it just feels like my skin is like burning, and not because I'm getting sunburned, although I am currently sunburned, but just like I tend to get overheated a lot. I like always have a fan on, basically blowing all the time, which is why I'm very hot right now, because I don't have a fan on because I'm recording and I wanted the sound quality to be good. So if you ever hear a fan going in the background of my videos, that would be why, because I'm very hot. And I just always have my fan on, like, all the time, even in winter, because I need to have air on my face. I don't know. I just, like, I get hot, I get headaches, I feel sick if I don't have air blowing on my face in, like, most of the time. So, yeah.
It's quite an awful experience to be in my body. I'm just constantly, like, sweating. Yeah. Even if I'm cold, I'm still sweating.
Yeah.
Like, it could be a snowstorm outside and I've still got sweat patches. Really pisses me off, actually, because I can't wear the colour grey at all. Sensory issues with food. I didn't think I had sensory issues with food until I was like, I have a superpower and I can tell if I'm going to like food just by looking at it. Looking back, that was autism, bestie.
So I have a lot of stuff around food. Like I do not have the superpower of liking food. I have the superpower of disliking food. But yeah, I think I'm going to cover that more and like give like a content warning and stuff for it later on in the video, like after I'm finished reacting to this, and just talk about my own experiences with food. So yeah, I'm not going to get into that here.
I also completely forgot to talk about stims, so I'm going to talk about stims a little bit. So I do have some, but I do this a lot with my hair, and then curl it around my thumb, and then curl it back round, and then curl it around my thumb, and then curl it back round. I do this a lot in videos as well, especially if I'm talking for a while. Another thing that I do, I've
definitely like stimmed with my hair some. It's kind of too short at the moment to stim with it much. I bite my fingers a lot. I bite my fingernails a lot, which is like not necessarily great. Sometimes I bite them too short and it's painful, but I just like, I don't like long nails. I really hate the feeling of my nails touching things. And then I also like bite my nails as a stim, like when I'm nervous or like just when I don't have anything to do with my hands. So my nails are very short. I like to stim by like stroking soft things. I love like not too soft. Okay, if it's too like that like fleecy texture of like winter jackets or like coats, I cannot stand that. Like it makes me like claustrophobic. It just does. But I don't know, like smooth and like soft things I like to stroke. I have a stuffed bunny that I like stroke its ears that I've had since I was a kid. I also like do this thing. I don't do it as much anymore, but I used to do it a lot where I like rub my fingers against each other. Like I don't really know how to describe it, but it's like I'm like just sort of moving my fingers and they're like brushing up against each other. I don't know if you can hear that. And I used to do that all the time, like when I would play piano and stuff. I'd just like sort of be rubbing my fingers and like sort of popping my hands and stuff.
And then masking is also a thing, which I don't feel like a lot of people know about, but masking is basically acting. So masking is masking your autistic traits to be more pleasable for people who aren't autistic, basically.
When I was around people in public more often, a lot of my energy went into monitoring the things I was doing and saying and how I was acting and what I was looking like, to make other people more comfortable, because I knew I was hyper aware of those things, you know, after years and years of what made other people uncomfortable and like what other people thought was not good. And so I would spend so much time like policing everything like I would say or like do or like the way I was looking. And it's just it's really exhausting.
And when people say, oh my God, you don't seem autistic, that's because I'm masking, bestie.
Yeah, that's because I'm putting a lot of effort.
That's because like I look what you consider normal kind of thing. But masking is actually a real drain on your resources. Imagine like having to act like somebody else all the time. Yeah. My mask started slipping in 2020. By masking, I don't mean like I was putting on a complete different persona. I don't mean stuff like that. I mean like masking to go to the shops. In front of the camera is the most myself I am. Like this is me. Obviously, when there's when there's variables like going to Tesco, socializing with people where things aren't as predictable, then I need to mask for that kind of thing. But obviously 2020 happened and I didn't have to leave the house anymore. I didn't have to mask. I didn't even know I was masking until it started slipping.
It's really nice to not have to and to be like, wow, like I can just kind of be myself. And that is something I do kind of worry that I'll have lost it, you know, when I need to have it again in the future, but like I shouldn't have to, you know, I shouldn't have to try to like pretend to be someone I'm not. But, you know, sometimes you kind of have to for like work and like jobs and stuff, and that can be very draining.
Gender as well is another topic that you wanted me to talk about. I am agender, and there is
too.
also a gender called autigender, which might
Also
suit me
me
more.
too.
I'm not
I
sure,
think,
but
I don't know, like I definitely, for me, I see like autigender, like I guess like my being autistic is related to my gender, but here, wait, I'll let Jessie say
gender
it.
because autistic people struggle with social constructs. My perception of gender for me is that it very much is a social construct for me only, and I find that I don't really relate to, like, I just feel like
For me, it's like it's a very restricting social construct. Like it just feels like a thing I'm trapped in. Like, you know, someone built it up around me and put me in a box, and I'm like, can I let me out? Like, I don't want to be here. Something that really bothers me too is like sometimes people will be like, their gender is agender. Like, no, agender is not a gender. Like, that's the point. It means no, like, no. Like, sometimes I want to describe myself as anti-gender just because I think, like, agender should mean, like, no, I don't have a gender. And obviously, like, people can use it how they want to, but a lot of people treat agender as if it's another gender to add on. It's like, no, the point is that it's not. The point is that I don't want anything to do with this. So it's also why, like, I use the word gender non-conforming for myself, because I do not conform to gender in a lot of different ways, and I don't want to, and yeah.
Also, relationships. This is an important one because obviously I really struggle with one-on-one communication. I find I can make friends really easily, but keeping them is quite difficult.
See, yeah, I cannot make friends easily, or like, yeah, no, I can't make friends easily, but I also really have a hard time, like, keeping up with them. For me, I have the problem a lot of times where I think of people as my friend if, like, I see them in class, like we have a class together, and I, like, sit near them, and, like, sometimes we talk after class, like, I would think, like, oh, we're friends. A lot of people think that you're only friends if you, like, make an effort to have, like, that one-on-one contact, or, like, make plans together regularly or talk directly regularly, and I just like don't do that. And so a lot of times the people that I might think of as a friend, they wouldn't think of me as a friend. Or like for me, it's not a big deal if like kind of a long time goes between when we talk, but for other people it is.
Actually, because I find that like traditionally friendships expect a lot of you, and I can't deliver on a lot of those things, and that is something that
like can we just like see each other like maybe once a week at like a club gathering that we're both going to, and like be friends? Like
I've just come to accept I can't deliver on a lot of them. It does help now that a lot of my friends are mostly neurodivergent and they all live away from me, so I only see them like once every couple of months.
I do find like communicating online a little bit easier for like in the same online community, because I can just like post about how I'm doing, and like they can post about how they're doing, and then like if we have something we want to talk about that one of us posts about, we can talk about it. And it's a lot less like stressful one-on-one communication for me. And for like relationships too, like if the relationship is not in front of me, I like forget it exists, and I forget that people exist. Like sometimes when I'm alone doing stuff, I just forget that other people exist. And then it's just, yeah, like it's not that I don't care about you, or the relationship. It's just, it just doesn't seem like a big deal to me, but like apparently it's a big deal for other people.
I also struggle with like remembering that people exist, which sounds
that's
so
what I was
harsh,
talking
but
about.
Like, unless something's right in front of me, I won't remember it exists.
Exist.
Very much out of sight, out of mind is the thing for me. I find that a lot of my autism traits also overlap with ADHD traits. Yeah. There is a lot of overlap between the two, and I very much have that one. It's hard for me to remember people exist. Sorry, it's really not personal. Relatable. It's just the way my mind's working. Doesn't mean I don't care about you. I do not empathise with Tories. I do not. I don't empathise with racists, and to be honest, I don't want to open my mind to hear other people's opinions. I'm quite happy with my left-wing opinions, right?
I had my parents, last time I was like at my parents' house, like my mom was arguing with me about like, I was saying like they don't care about people because they aren't like willing to do anything to protect people like from not getting COVID and stuff, and honestly for a lot of other reasons, but basically I was just pointing out like it just seems like my sister just doesn't care about how her actions affect anyone, And then, like, my parents were going off about how, like, I need to, like, have an open mind and, like, be more accepting of other people. And, like, so they were saying stuff about how, like, poor people just take advantage of, like, handouts and, like, and then, like, I was saying, like, no, I don't want to listen to that. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and let you talk to me about, like, why poor people don't deserve anything. And then they're like, well, you know, in life, you'll need to learn how to open your mind and, like, talk about these things and listen. Like, no, like, I don't have to listen to people being, like, racist and classist and transphobic and stuff. Like, no, I don't need to listen. Like, I don't need to hear your part of the story where, like, according to you, it's okay to discriminate against people. Like, no, I'm not gonna, no, you know, and that's something that my family always, like, fights with me about, is like, oh, you just need to listen to our side. And it's like, I listened to your side, and your side was racism, and I'm like, no, that's not okay. Like, that, I'm not gonna compromise with you on this situation. And they just think, like, I don't know, they think that, like, the only way to get along with people socially is to compromise. Like, you can't compromise on, like, people being treated well and on, like, what's right.
I don't want to sit and debate people's rights. I don't want to hear hot takes from right-wingers about whether or not
I don't
people
have to
should
listen
have
to you
rights.
about
Everybody
that.
should have fucking rights. Prefer to call it woohoo. I'm asexual. Didn't realise I was asexual.
I'm also asexual. Wow.
I always felt like a bit of a weirdo in that. I remember saying to a boyfriend one time, I feel like I've just came out puberty the wrong way. Oh, bestie. You came out puberty the right way for you.
I was always told, like, oh, you know, you'll grow up and then you'll want to do it. And then I grew up and I didn't. And I was like, and they're like, well, you'll grow up. And I'm like, no, but I don't. But I don't, though. Yeah, I first heard about demisexuality from a YouTuber, actually. I watched a video about demisexuality. I was like, well, that sounds like me. Like, yeah, I definitely, like, don't want to do anything with people, like, until I get to know them. Like, I want to be friends first. And then later, after I'd been, like, identifying mostly privately as, like, demisexual for a while, I realized that, like, I heard what sexual attraction was, and I was like, no, people feel that? Like, I'm also aromantic. I'm not interested in a lot of things that are coded as romantic. It's just, like, friendship, but, like, close. For me, it's, like, platonic. I actually have, like, queer platonic partners, and it's very nice to have, like, you know, our relationships can be whatever we want them to be, and it doesn't have to follow any of, like, the societal norms and rules, and, like, we can just do the things we want, and we don't have to do the things we don't want to do, and it's really great. I'm
asexual and agender. Still romantically attracted to men, though. Make it make sense! Make it make sense! I have never in my life been sexually attracted to anybody, and that is not an insult. If you're any of my ex-boyfriends watching this, it's not an insult. I was romantically attracted into you, but I just can't be sexually attracted to anybody. Asexual isn't just that, by the way. There's multiple different things about asexuality, but this is my experience with it. I have woohooed in the past. I'd prefer not to ever do it again, but this is a difficult thing with this kind of thing, because...
See, okay, I'm heavy, like, I'm gonna say heavy content warning for, like, societal expectations around sex. So skip ahead a bit if you don't want to hear about this part. I'll probably have timestamps as well, so you can skip to, like, the next section. I always thought that, or I was always told that I would grow up and I would get married to a man, and that this would have to happen, and, like, that would happen. And, like, if I didn't want to, well, for one, like, no one even discussed if I didn't want to. Like, I was not taught anything about consent or the idea that I had the right to not consent. It was just a thing that would happen if I got married, you know, and I was supposed to get married. And so, like, in my mind, there was only two options, which is, like, I would get married to a man and I would do it and I would not enjoy it. Or I would, like, I'd, like, get engaged to someone, and then I'd have to tell them, like, I don't think I can do this, and then they'd probably break up with me, you know? And that's, like, the thing is, like, I never even particularly wanted to, like, be in a relationship with a man. I didn't really care. I didn't want to get married, but, like, I just thought that I had to, you know? Like, I don't want to get married. I never pictured that with anyone in particular. I just thought that's what was going to happen. Like, I thought that was what I had to do. But it's not what you have to do. Like, you don't, just because society says, like, this is the normal thing to do, you don't have to. Like, you can say no. And like your consent is important, and what you want to do is important. And if you don't want to do it, then you shouldn't have to. And if anyone tells you that you have to do something like in a relationship that you don't want to do, they're not really caring for you and for your needs, and you deserve to have your needs cared for. I felt a lot better, and it's been very freeing to know, like, basically just to understand consent, to understand that I don't have to do something I don't want to do. And like, I can say no, and I can say yes, and I can say maybe, and pause, and let me think about it, and like, I'm not sure, can we explore this? And I just was never taught that at all as a kid. And I think that's really horrible, to like not teach kids that they have a choice, because everyone should have a choice. Not just about this, but about anything. Like, we need to be teaching kids about consent in every situation, and we need to be treating kids like they have the ability to say no, because in so many things we don't give kids the option to say no, and that's really messed up, and that's not okay.
Autism impacts literally every single thing in my life, every single thing in my brain. It's hard to differentiate between like, well, am I asexual because I've got autism? Would I be asexual if I didn't have autism? Would I be agender if I didn't have autism? It's quite hard to like differentiate those things. So I don't know if I'm asexual.
I think like for me, it's like this is just who I am, like there's not a me that's not autistic. There's not a me that's not asexual or not agender. Like, that's just who I am. Like, this is who I am. So that other hypothetical person isn't me, So there's no disentangling it. It's just, that's who I am.
I've got autism, but I'm asexual. And God, what a freeing thing to understand when it clicked. And I was like, shit, that's me, bestie. You can hold my hand and that's a push. Anything more than that? No.
Yeah, relatable. It's like, I might maybe be interested in holding a hand. Maybe.
And then also people are asking about my experience with education and going through school. And I am very, very academic, besties. Mm-hmm. I have a master's degree, first class, actually. I'm very book smart.
I do not have a master's degree, but I would like to go to graduate school, I think. So maybe in the future.
But I'm not life smart. I'm not. I am a little bit though.
I do. That's something I worry actually about, like graduate school. Like wherever I go, like I'll have to move somewhere, and like it might be a big city, and like I don't know that I can survive in a big city. Like I don't know. I'm pretty good at like figuring stuff out. I'm pretty self-sufficient. I worry that I would make naive decisions and would put myself in danger, and I wouldn't understand the danger. It's not like I leave my apartment that much anyway, so it's like, it's not that big of a deal, but like, you probably do have to leave the house sometimes.
I had a very deep interest in Hannah Montana, so I printed out 100 pictures of Hannah Montana. I got suspended for that. But a lot of the times it was like, I didn't understand that it was serious, or I didn't understand that what I was doing was wrong. I didn't understand when to be quiet. I didn't understand when to talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of talked about this a bit already, but yeah, that was I think probably the biggest problem for me is like navigating not talking that much. And like, it's not like I was just like talking socially in class. Like, I was talking about the stuff we were learning, but it was still clearly annoying to some people, and like sometimes I would correct teachers and they didn't necessarily like that. But also like, okay, I had some teachers that were just mean, like, or they were unhelpful. Like, students would ask a valid question and the teacher would give some like non-response or be like, that's like stupid question. And it's like, and I knew the answer, but I also knew that like it was a valid question, and so I would like explain the answer to them. Like, I had a French teacher whose students would ask about French, like not during a test or anything, not when like, we were supposed to be taking a test. Like, they would just ask like, hey, what's this word in French? Or like, how do I say this in French? Or like, why does it work this way? Why is the grammar like this? And our teacher knew French very well. Like, she was fluent in French, but she wouldn't answer their questions. And I just didn't understand. I'm like, you're a teacher. You're supposed to be teaching people this stuff. And they just wouldn't. And so like, I would just answer the other students' questions because I hated that of like, why are you not answering their perfectly valid question? These, like, they want to learn. Why are you making it hard for them to learn? I just can never understand that. I honestly cannot, like, why would you not answer a question that someone is asking, like, to better understand your class?
It used to make me feel very uncomfortable. and I didn't like having autism, to be honest with you. Like, it was still quite a shameful thing for me. Now I don't think I'd get rid of it, and I understand myself so much better as a person, and I'm so glad of that.
Yeah,
and because
that's so great when you can like come to accept yourself and understand yourself better, and I don't know, stop feeling shame for who you are. It's something like I'm definitely still working on unpacking, and like I notice there's like internalized ableism in some of the ways that I react to myself, and I have a hard time like figuring out like if I want to be myself, like who even is that, because I've spent so long masking and knowing that certain parts of me are like gonna lead to people mistreating me. But it is really freeing to be able to understand yourself and like who you are and figure out who that is and be in community with other people who accept you and like who you are as a person.
Because I understand myself so much better as a person. The people around me understand myself so much better. You guys understand me so much better as a person. And I really fucking like who I am as a person. I might not get it right 100% of the time. I know who I am and I really like myself. And I think that's a really important quality. And also, it's not all bad to have autism, right? Because a lot of, like,
I love this, the all caps. I have so many interests I'm so passionate about. I love it. That's great. Yeah, I'm also very passionate about my interest, and it's really great. It's really great being passionate about stuff. It's amazing.
But I have so many fucking interests that I'm so passionate about, and I fucking love it. I talk at my YouTube channel is basically I talk about my special interests while I play The Sims, which is also funnily enough a special interest.
It's definitely a special interest for me too, though not as long as Plumbella, who's been playing since like 2000 or something. I don't even it's not nearly as long for me, but The Sims is definitely a special interest for me too.
Find myself absolutely fucking hilarious. I do, and it is so freeing in some regards to like just not give a fuck about what society says. Like, yeah, I'm in my mid-20s and I like collecting toys. I think we should all collect toys, actually. Like, I just do what I want to do, and I don't give a fuck about what people think about it, and it's so freeing. Also, I think it's important to talk about like lesser known things about autism or dispelling myths about autism. So a big thing that I see, and people say this a bit reassuringly, and it's not reassuring, bestie, when you tell people that you're autistic and people are like, everyone's a little bit autistic.
Content warning for this section about talking about like parents not accepting you and like coming out and like queer phobia and stuff like that. So like I tried to like come out to my dad as autistic. Be like, hey, like, I think I'm autistic. And he was like, well, isn't everyone a little bit autistic? And then I just didn't talk about it anymore. And the thing is, like, okay, maybe you are a little bit autistic. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if my dad is autistic. And, like, it does, run in families. But, yeah, I figured out this thing about myself. And then, like, I don't trust my parents to accept me for who I am. So it's, like, at one point I wanted to like tell them about it and like talk to them about it. I don't know. There's nothing for me valuable in like sharing my identity with them because they'll just make me feel bad about it. I like who I am, and like I'm in a community of lots of other autistic people who know who I am and like who I can relate to. And like, why should I have to explain myself to people who aren't willing to understand? And honestly, I was going to tell my parents more about it. I was going to talk to them about it. And then I realized that I was like queer. And I was like, oh, I can never tell my parents about that. So it kind of, put a damper on that because it's like, well, if I, like knowing myself, if I started coming out to them as autistic, it would just all come out and I'd just keep talking and then it would go really, really badly. So yeah.
And this is like really harmful actually. And I feel like this is something that is especially applicable to my situation because people look at me and they watch my YouTube channels and everything like that. And if we're going to go by these terms, I'm high functioning, but this is my most comfortable place right now. I'm totally at ease right now. And even this is hard for me sometimes. So people think I'm high functioning. But what you don't see is the fact that if I didn't have a mum, I would need a care team. I can't manage my own bills. I don't know how to take care of myself. Yeah. I go non-verbal. So
and that's the thing is like you only see people in certain situations. You don't know their internal experience. You don't know what things are like for them. Other times you don't know, like, if after they finish talking to you, they're going to go and collapse in exhaustion and have a meltdown, you know, like, and also, like, high functioning and low functioning as labels are often used to dismiss people. You know, you're either too low functioning to have an opinion or you're too high functioning to have an opinion, because, like, shouldn't you stop speaking over other low functioning people? It's like as if you let low functioning, you know, people you label as low functioning talk about their experiences, because they don't do that either. And I've definitely had this happen to me where, like, I try to talk about my experiences and it's shut down by people who, like, don't know anything about autism, but because they've done really harmful therapies, you know, therapies in quotes, with autistic people, they, like, think they're the expert. It's like, no, you, content warning for, like, yeah, like I said, very harmful therapies. But, like, no, you tried to make people appear less autistic. You're not an expert in autism. You tried to completely change how an autistic person acted. Like, you're not an expert in autism. You know, you don't get to tell me that I can't talk about my experiences because, like, your experience is that actually stimming is really bad for autistic people, and, like, that's why I made them stop. Like, no, you're not an expert. You're someone who is harming autistic people.
Don't know just by looking at someone. These needs can change as well. So having a high functioning or low functioning label is not a good thing. Also, a lot of you wanted me to talk about the diagnostic process. She's a fucking bitch, actually. The NHS is really ran thin. Fuck the government and fuck Boris. But if you would like to, it's shit as well, because I'm not sure how it works in America, but in the UK, NHS is like the big thing. And, like, my NHS person told me that private diagnoses, I'm not sure how the true this is, I'm just taking it from the NHS. Private diagnoses aren't really worth the paper that thingy done. There's things that I can go to, therapy that I can get and stuff, because I'm diagnosed, that if you don't have an NHS diagnosis, you can't get into, kind of thing, which means that the NHS diagnosis is the only, like, credible way of getting it.
See, okay, like, here in the US, it's very, I mean, it just kind of depends on what your insurance will cover, if you have insurance. And when it comes to, like, being diagnosed as an adult, or, like, they love to pretend that, like, adults, like, autistic people and, like, people with ADHD don't exist. But, like, again, it's a thing that you're born with that is, like, always there. You don't grow out of it. They continue to exist, but, like, there's usually not any services for, like, adults who are autistic. And I think the diagnostic process can be useful in some cases because it can help you understand yourself better. But, like, most of the time we understand ourselves better than a, you know, professional. And a lot of times they don't really know what they're doing. You know, obviously it's going to depend a lot on, like, who you're able to talk to and, like, you know, what insurance you have, what access you have. But it's not, and honestly, getting diagnosed with most things is not easy. Like, you can, you know, self-advocate as much as you want. It's not going to make a difference a lot of times when, like, the doctor doesn't want to diagnose you with something. So
just, it might take...
Yeah, I'm not gonna like play all of this for y'all, but if you want to hear more about, like, the diagnostic process in the UK with the NHS, definitely go watch this video on Plumbella's channel.
But also, I do just want to say that being diagnosed is a privilege. The waiting list is fucking long. And on this channel, I class self-diagnosis as valid if you've done the proper research.
I'm really thankful that they said this, because, like, sometimes people will, like, get all, like, oh, like, it's not real if you self-diagnose, but, like, you don't become autistic when you're diagnosed by a professional. Like, people just are autistic. And, like, sometimes professionals will say, like, oh, I can see that you're autistic. Here's a piece of paper that says that you're autistic. But, like, that doesn't make you autistic. Like, you just are. So to say that, like, it's only real if you're diagnosed doesn't make any sense, because it's a thing that exists. Like, people just are this way. And it's a lot easier to understand yourself from within than, like, a lot of the criteria for diagnosing autism and stuff is based on outside observation that doesn't understand the reason for the things that they're observing. So, like, when you can look from the inside and see, like, why are these things happening? What's your internal experience? I think that you can, like, understand yourself and understand being autistic a lot better, and, like, by talking to other autistic people. And that was something that's really important for me, is getting involved in an autistic community. And, like, there's never been a question with other autistic community members of, like, if I'm autistic or not. Like, it's just so obvious that I am. This is a label that's helpful to me. It's one that helps me understand myself. It's one that helps me find community. You know, it would be nice if I could go through a diagnostic process and it would, like, mean anything, and it would be helpful, and it would mean I could get supports and stuff like that, but I just don't, it just won't most likely. Like, there really aren't that many supports a lot of times in the workplace, and even if you legally have to have reports, they can just like not hire you or fire you anyways, and then pretend it didn't have anything to do with you being disabled, even though it did. Especially like where I live, like there's no protections for workers, so like having an official diagnosis, like how's that gonna help me? I don't know, like maybe it would help me in graduate school, but like also they're kind of shit about actually listening to that kind of stuff too. So I don't know, if it was something accessible to me, I might want to go through a diagnostic process, but I guess I'll talk a little bit about my experience with that. So just like a content warning here for, I guess, for like not being listened to by like therapists or like counselors and like the whole that process and stuff. So when I realized, like after I'd realized I was autistic and I realized like I have a lot of trauma that I kind of need to work through, I went to my student counseling center, where I was doing my undergraduate. And I like made an appointment and I said like, hey, I'm here to talk because like I'm autistic and I'm not asking you to diagnose me. I just want to talk about it. I just need someone to talk to, which is like, that's kind of what a lot of therapy is just having someone to talk to about stuff. Like they're supposed to just listen and like be non-judgmental and stuff. But I went in and I was like, yeah, I just like want to talk to someone about it. But when the therapist I had, like he didn't know anything about being autistic or about like autism. Basically, I went in and I'm like, hey, I'm autistic. I just like want to talk about it. So he asked me like, how many friends do you have? And I was like, well, that's a weird question. But I like thought about all the people I like went to church with, the people I saw in class, the people I like, my roommate, like the people I saw and stuff, and I like counted them all up, and I'm like, oh, I have like this many friends. And he was like, oh, well then you're not autistic, because if you were autistic you wouldn't have friends. And I, like, for one, he didn't ask me who I was thinking of as a friend or like what made them my friends. Probably like half of those people would not have called me a friend, like to me they were friends, but that doesn't mean anything. Just the fact that he thought from that one question how many friends you have, and if you have any friends you can't be autistic. Like, that's just a horrible way of looking at it. And basically just like I wanted to talk about that stuff, but then I just kind of felt deflated. Like I just couldn't even, like where do you go from there? And like I clearly knew way more about autism and even like the diagnostic criteria than he did. And then like he ended up giving me some resources to a clinic on campus that did ABA with kids. Which if you don't know, ABA is applied behavioral analysis. It's a lot of therapies, like a lot of different things are called ABA. At its core, kind of the main principle of it is trying to change the behavior of autistic people to fit in more and be like less autistic. And it's just really harmful. There's a lot has been said in like autistic communities online and stuff about how harmful it is. And so just the fact that like he just came in and just gave, like, it's not even like I could go to their clinic. Like, it was for children, and I'm a college student. Like, it's not even, like, what am I gonna do there? It's just this whole thing of, like, viewing autism as, like, a thing to be fixed and not just, like, a way that people are. And it was a pretty horrible experience. Also, like, I told him about some trauma I had and how, basically, I described CPTSD symptoms of, like, experiencing traumatic feelings associated with like things in my past and how like thinking about them would like make me cry and feel really, really, really bad. And I would like say like, like I wanted to work through the trauma I had, and he was like, well, that's a normal response, and like left it there. Like, I'm just like, hey, like I have this traumatic reaction and I want to like work through it or like talk about it. And he's just like, oh, well, that's normal. Like, that's a normal response to trauma, and then, like, nothing more about it. And I'm like, okay. Like, yeah, okay, it's normal, but, like, it's causing me harm, and I want to work through it, or, like, talk about it or something. But, yeah, it was just kind of a horrible experience, and it definitely did not make me want to, like, try to find someone to go through the official diagnostic process, because even just, like, I just thought I could find someone to just talk about stuff with, and that went horribly. So, yeah.
It's fucking hard to get a diagnosis. It's hard in like different ways in different places. Like in America, it's expensive. In the UK, it's free, but it's a fucking long time, and you can't just, if you need help, like right now, if you need the diagnosis right now, you can't get it. So, but I love you all. Also, things to know, I do just want to say that I live in a poor working class area of the UK, Middlesbrough. to be precise, up the borough. I'm still a white girl, so obviously the experiences that I'm talking about can only relate to my experience as a white girl living in a poor working class area. Obviously, people with different backgrounds, different upbringings, different experiences will have different experiences, hardships, positives, etc. This is just my experience as a white
it's definitely
girl
also
in
to like
working class.
to note that people are going to experience being autistic differently. People who live at the intersections of various oppressions, like it's not just addition of those things, it's like multiplication, you know? It all mixes together and makes it all worse, instead of just like, it's not just like you're this and this and this, and like they all combine, you know?
Thank you all so much for joining me today. This video is really me being vulnerable, and it's going to be really difficult for me to post because I've opened up a lot with your besties. I really hope that it helps some people. Just thank you all.
Yeah, honestly, this was really helpful for me to be able to like process my own stuff, and I'm really thankful that they uploaded it. Yeah. I'm going to talk about a few more things, like add on some stuff from my own life, like food, because that's a really big like category under the whole like being autistic thing for me, that I think it varies, so like it's not as big of a deal for Jessie as it is for me. So I'm going to talk about that. I'll have like timestamps for that section too, so if you want to skip it though. Might be other topics I'm going to talk about too.
I hope it helps. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next one. Autism Assemble!
Yeah, I'm here because I'm I'm the autism assembling. But yeah, so that's it for like the direct reaction to Plumbella's video. Like I said, it is a very good video. I highly recommend going to their channel and watching it yourself, and also watching some of the other Sims videos because they're very cool. Thank you, Plumbella, for sharing your experiences. It was very useful for me to use as like a jumping off point and to talk about my own. I hope that's okay. I think that they'll probably be okay with it. I don't want to like cross any lines, but it's something I've wanted to talk about, but it's hard to figure out how to organize my thoughts. So it was very helpful to have this to like work off of a little bit. So thanks. Okay, so on to a few topics that I wanted to cover that weren't like super relevant to the direct reaction to Plumbella's video. To start out, I want to talk about sort of like my childhood autistic traits, just some things that looking back, I'm like, wow, that should have been obvious. So the first parts of this are based on like things that I was told. I don't remember these, but like one example that to me, I think I experience it as like related to being autistic, which is that starting at a very, very young age, I would only sleep if I was alone in my crib. Like a lot of times young kids, they want to be around people when they sleep, or like they need to sleep like with their parents or whatever. No, like from the time I was like a couple months old, I would only go to sleep when I was completely alone in my crib by myself. And I think even like I wanted to be in a different room too. And it fits with how I am now. I generally like to have my space, and I don't like to sleep like near other people. So I see that as, I guess, like I've always been sort of independent, and I've liked having my space. And that's also like a sensory thing where like I don't like other people being around me is not very great sensory wise when I'm trying to sleep. So yeah, there's that. And then like moving on from that, when I was like 18 months old, apparently I lined up all of my crayons in a row and asked my mom to teach me the colors of them, like what all the colors were, which I think is just kind of a fun story, but it also, there's aspects of it that I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see that. I also like trying to remember when I started learning to read, and I know I definitely learned a lot from school, but I think I sort of like picked things up on my own as well. I played a lot of spelling games as a kid, and like games that involved words, and like I was just very, very interested in like words and spelling and reading and writing, and I did like I kind of hyper focused on that a lot as a kid. I was kind of hyperlexic. I know that part of what opened up reading to me was learning at school in kindergarten, but it seemed to like come on very quickly. Like once I started to understand, I was reading everything I saw everywhere all the time. And I would even analyze like how often certain letters appeared, and I would do all these sorts of like analyses of language and how it worked and stuff like that. They had book programs, like reading programs over the summer at the library, and you'd get like prizes and stuff for how much you read. And I remember like very religiously keeping track of all the books I read. They like tracked it in different ways, different years. So like one year it was all the pages. And so I like sat down at my bookshelf and I would just like read all of the books and like write them down and then read the next book and then write it down and then read the next book. So basically what I'm saying is I read a ton as a kid, and it was like kind of a way to escape, to dissociate from like overwhelming sensory situations. And also just kind of, I don't know, it brought me a lot of joy to read, and I loved like learning things, but I was also very like, I really liked keeping track of things and like getting points. Like we had these reading AR tests, and I like wanted to get like the most points, I wanted to like get all the questions right and like read every single book. There's also like a lot of stuff from since I was very, very young about food and like my sensitivity to food. But I'm going to expand on that in the next section, just so I can so that if like that's a hard topic that people want to skip, if it's not something they want to hear about, they can just skip that section. So moving on from food. A lot of my autistic traits I feel like became very apparent once I started kindergarten, because I was like going to school every day for like 7 hours a day, having to mask all the time. I was having to try to figure out social situations. I was having to try to follow every rule, because I followed every single rule literally to the letter. And so like according to my parents, they described it as I got like really hard to handle, and I was like acting out when I started kindergarten at like when I went home. And like, no, I'm pretty sure I was just like very overstimulated and having meltdowns more often once I started kindergarten. But it's like, oh wow, you used to be such a good kid, and then you started kindergarten and you were like not a good kid anymore. It's like, no, I was just exhausted. But yeah, I was like in kindergarten especially, I was extremely literal about every rule. It was like nap time or something, and our teacher left the room and she told us all to like be quiet and take our naps and stuff. And then basically all the other kids started talking, and when she came back in, she was like, I know you were talking, like who was talking? And I was like, well, I might have like said something to one of my classmates like at one point, like I don't remember, but I think I said something. And so I like raised my hand, and I was the only person who raised my hand, was like, I was talking, because I was always so like such a stickler for following the rules. Like I was the only one who said, oh, I was talking, when like I wasn't really one of the main ones talking at all. But I didn't understand the idea of like lying to teachers or like breaking rules and not telling that you broke the rules or that other people broke the rules. Like I didn't understand what I guess most of my other classmates seemed to understand at that point. I have another story about like being very literal, but I'm going to give a content warning for this of like injury and some blood. So skip ahead a little bit if you don't want to hear about this. So my kindergarten teacher had told us like, when I'm working one-on-one with a student at my desk, don't interrupt us unless there's buckets of blood. And so I took that to heart. I was like, okay, well, she's working with a student. Like, I won't interrupt unless there are buckets of blood involved. And so I was like going to do my work. I just had a freshly sharpened pencil, and I tripped over another student's legs, and the sharpened pencil went straight up into my chin and got stuck there. There's actually still like some graphite, I think it's graphite, from the tip of the pencil lead in my chin to this day. But I got some pencil lead stuck in my chin. I mean, I had a whole pencil stuck in my chin. It hurt, and there was a little bit of blood, but I was like, okay, there are not buckets of blood. And my teacher said, only interrupt her if there's buckets of blood. So instead, I just like stood in the classroom crying with a pencil stuck in my chin, like waiting for my teacher to be done working with a student, because there weren't buckets of blood, until she finally noticed me and was like, what, why didn't you tell me? And I was like, there weren't buckets of blood. It was just a little bit of blood. And then she like sent me to the nurse and was like, no, you should have told me. Yeah. So even in like situations like that, I was just very literal. Like she said, buckets of blood. Well, there weren't buckets. There were only some drops of blood. So that feels very like illustrative of my mindset as like a young kid and starting school. And that was something that like really made things hard, is that I had to learn that not every rule is supposed to be literal. And like sometimes people, when they say stuff like that, they aren't taking into account every situation, and they don't like actually mean what they say, which is very confusing. Like, especially, if you're talking to like little kids, maybe you should just Like, say exactly what you mean, you know? Okay. And I talked about this a bit, but I always, like, sort of identified as weird and as, like, a nerd. And, like, I knew that I didn't fit in with other students. I always felt very alone, too. Like, even when I had friends that I would hang out with and stuff at school or even outside of school, and I guess that's another thing, because usually, like, if I hung out outside of school with friends, it was because they thought of it. Like, they'd be like, hey, let's hang out at your house. So, like, I did hang out with friends sometimes, but usually I was not the one who came up with the idea. Like, and not because I didn't care about them, but I was just like, well, we see each other at school. Like, why would we need to see each other other times, you know? But apparently people like doing that. But yeah, even when, like, I had friends, I still felt generally kind of alone, like there was no one that really understood me. And I felt like that for a long time. It's only been recently, like, connecting with other, like, neurodivergent and, like, queer and trans people that I feel like sometimes people actually understand me, and, like, I don't know, I just feel less alone, which is really nice, because I felt very alone for most of my life, honestly. Also, there's you know, a stereotype of, like, lining up all of your toys instead of playing with them, which, like, I mean, who says lining up toys isn't playing with them? But, like, I do remember as a kid, whenever I had, like, dolls or, like, toys that I was playing with, I would spend all of my time setting up a scene. So, like, I would dress the dolls or I would set up the house, but, like, I would put in little details to, like, give story or background to the characters or to the house. Very similar to what I do in The Sims, actually, which I think is really interesting. Like, this whole, like, telling a story through the rooms and through the clothes and stuff like that. And then I wouldn't really play out the scenes. Like, I wouldn't have, like, my dolls or my toys, like, have conversations or anything. I guess I didn't really do social situations with my toys. Usually it was just, like, me, and then, like, I'd have, like, a doll, and I guess I almost saw myself as, like, the doll, you know? Like, I didn't really play out social situations or, like, conversations among people. Which I guess, yeah, that probably is, like, related to being autistic. And I mentioned before how, like, I'm very deeply affected by emotions in media and stuff, but, like, it used to be really bad. Like, I couldn't watch Disney movies because they were too scary. So, like, my favorite Disney princess movie was Cinderella, just because no one was trying to, like, murder someone in that movie. Whereas, like, a lot of the other princess movies, like, someone is literally trying to kill the, like, princesses or someone else, and that terrified me, and it, like, made me really, really scared. So yeah, there was just, like, I had a hard time watching a lot of stuff as a kid because the emotions in it would just, like, affect me really, really deeply, and if anyone was scared in the media, then, like, I would be, like, terrified. Okay, so for this next section, I want to give a content warning that I will be talking about food. I'll be talking about, like, being a picky eater, restrictive eating, and also specifically about, like, my parents restricting food for me. So if this is a topic that you don't need to hear about, that it wouldn't be good for you to hear about, feel free to skip it. You know, like, please don't hurt yourself listening to this. It's okay. You can skip this section. You can go watch another video. It's perfectly fine. So I have never eaten meat or vegetables, or at least I haven't chosen to eat those things. I haven't liked those things. Those are two broad categories I can mention, but there are a lot of other things I don't like. Like, I've never really been able to handle rice, because of the texture, or, like, mashed potatoes. Yeah, there's entire groups of food that I just, like, could never eat, or I usually, you know, would use the terms of, like, oh, I don't like that, or I don't want to eat it. But it's, like, it would cause me distress to eat it. You know, it's not just like, oh, well, I'd rather have this. It's like, no, this is, like, causes severe, like, sensory problems for me, and I cannot stand it. But that's been happening since I was, like, very, very young. Like, since I started eating solid food, basically. But I always had, you know, there were always some things that I liked. They were, like, comfort foods. There were safe foods that I had. I was eating things, even if I didn't necessarily want to eat, like, everything. But apparently, when I was, like, 2 years old, my mom got worried that I wasn't eating any of these things, and so she basically told me that I was only allowed to eat the things I didn't like. I guess, in a way to, like, try to get me to change what I was eating. And instead, I just didn't eat for, like, 2 days until I was, like, shaking from, hunger and like not having had food because apparently she was serious. I could only eat the things that I hated, and so I just didn't eat anything. And it took her like going to a like counselor and then being like, your 2-year-old needs to eat food. You should give your 2-year-old the food that your child will eat. And she was like, oh, okay. I'll give food. I just have a hard time wrapping my mind around that. Like, yeah, I get being worried about your kid, but like there are ways to work with them to figure out like how to make sure they get the nutrients they need that don't include restricting them from all the food that they enjoy, and then like, anyways, that just, like, I don't remember that, but my parents have told me stories about it, and they didn't seem to realize how horrific of a thing it was to do. And I definitely remember later instances of, like, being forced to eat things, or being, made to stay at the table forever and ever and ever, waiting for me to eat the peas or whatever. And just, it really made a negative impact on my relationship with food, one that I'm still trying to repair. I have since realized that there are ways I can introduce new foods. There are ways I can try new things and figure out like healthier ways to eat for me to get all the nutrients I need, to get like the protein and the fiber that I need. There are ways to do that don't involve shaming and like forcing me to eat things that I hate, and like those things that I was forced to eat as a kid, like I'm never going to be able to eat them now. There's no way that I can introduce them into my diet. There's too many traumatic memories. It just made it all way worse. And like, I'm mostly talking about my own experiences here, but if you're ever in that situation where like you have a kid who is picky about what they eat, like consider working with them instead of against them. Don't make it into a battle, but like, I've really been enjoying cooking and like finding, I've always really liked refried beans, right? And so eventually I branched out to trying seasoned black beans in like tacos and stuff. And I realized like, oh, I actually kind of like these. And so then I learned to like cook black beans on my own and like season them. And then like I've been branching out to more and more things through that. But by identifying food that I already like and like what are the aspects of this food that I like, and then finding similar things or like figuring out the ways that I like the new food, instead of just being like, oh, you hate peas? Well, here, we'll force you to eat peas every night and you can't do anything else until you eat the peas. Like, that's a horrible way of approaching this. And it was just very traumatizing. It also is really complicated going out to restaurants and stuff. Usually if there is any food that I can eat, it's like on the kids menu, and it's usually only like a couple of things. It's not a very varied diet. So it has been really nice. Recently I've just mostly been cooking for myself at home. I'm not like trying to go out to restaurants, and it's just, it's annoying to have to cook a lot of the time, but like, it is really helping my relationship with food to be able to make things that I like the way that I know that I'll like them, and to like be able to be in control of the food and to know that there will be something for me to eat and it will be filling and it will be nutritious and I will enjoy eating it. And sometimes I try new things and it doesn't work out. Like, I thought, okay, I can't eat rice, but, I've heard a lot about quinoa. Like, what if I tried, black beans and quinoa? So I got some quinoa and I made it, and it tasted pretty good. Like, I enjoyed it, but what I noticed was, like, the first bite, okay, I was like, oh, this is really good. And then as I kept eating, it got harder and harder and harder to take the next bite. It just, like, there was some sort of block, and I was like, it tastes fine. Like, what is wrong? Why am I having such a hard time finishing this? Or even just taking another bite? And I realized after a bit, like after I'd made quinoa a couple times, I was like, oh, the texture is just really grating to me, and it's just not good sensory wise. Like, I tried this thing and I liked the taste, but I can't handle the texture. It's like rice, it's kind of similar to rice, honestly, in texture, where like that stickiness, I just couldn't handle. And I was like, okay, I tried quinoa. It doesn't work for me. That's okay. I don't have to force myself to eat it just because, like, other people say that I should, And so that's been very freeing, too, is that I can experiment and I can realize why I might not like something. It's okay if I move on to other things. And I even, I was able to incorporate spinach into some of my pasta dishes recently. And I was like, hey, this actually isn't bad. Like, I ate spinach and enjoyed it, but I never would have had that experience with the way that, my parents treated food, where it was like, here's how it is, like it's a punishment, you have to eat all of it, you know, instead of being able to experiment and figure out what do I like, and if I don't like it, I don't have to eat it. And that's really freeing, and like to actually just be able to say no again, like to be able to say no to food and be like, well, I gave it a try, we can move on to something else that I enjoy. And I definitely have a bit of like food neophobia as well, like even when it's something that, you know, I should like there's really no reason I shouldn't like it. And even if it's something that I eventually do come to like, a lot of times the first few times, I will have a really negative reaction. Like I can taste it and be like, this is good, I like the taste, the texture isn't bad, but it'll still give me like a headache, or I won't be able to eat more than a few bites. And like, you know, it takes me some time to get used to things, and that's okay. And when it's treated as something that is okay, it makes it a lot easier to try again and see, maybe I will like it. But when it's something that I feel like I'm forced to do and forced to keep eating when I have a hard time with it, it makes it hard to introduce new foods at all. So yeah, I'm still a picky eater, but now I have more power over what I eat, and it's really great. All right, I think that's all I have to say for this video. I know it's kind of a long video, but yeah, that's all I have to say for now. This has honestly been like really great to make, just because it's helped me like reflect on myself and on my past experiences and on like who I am now. I don't know, that's something that I find hard to do, that introspection, but now it's in a video, so I guess that's cool. And I've like a lot of my memories and stuff like that. So yeah, once again, thank you to Plumbella for like making the video that I was able to sort of build off of for this one. If you haven't already, make sure you go watch that video after this one. And if you enjoyed this video, you can give it a like, you can subscribe to see more videos from me. If you like this like really long form content, I've started streaming on Twitch. If you want to come and hang out with me, I'll put the link to that in the description down below. And I'm thinking about making a channel to like upload the VODs on YouTube, so let me know if y'all are interested in that as well. And oh yeah, and like please leave some comments about your experiences of like if you're autistic, if you're neurodivergent, like let me know your thoughts and your experiences as well. I would love to hear about them and talk to you about them, as long as you are not discounting my experiences in the comments. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.